Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the EDM Grid podcast. And it is actually the final episode of season
Oh,
1 of the EDM Grid podcast. You guys don't have to deal with any more of these for at least another 2 months, guys.
for at least another 2 months. Hey, that's
For at
a
least two
good
months.
time for vacations.
Once
Yep.
again, my name is Henry, also known as Hank Cray, joined by Oswald, aka Oswald. The intros are the
Hey,
exact same as the first episode. How is it going?
it's going great. Yep. For last episode, it's very sad, but will be missed,
Well,
I'm
maybe
sure.
the
No,
plushie that you have next to
actually,
you.
I'm like so hyped because also season 2 is gonna be crazy.
Oh, of
That's for
course.
sure.
And if you need something to cheer you up, the plushie that's sitting to the left of you will also
Don't
make you
worry,
feel a
he's
little bit
fine.
better.
That's fine. He's fine.
But what will also make me even happier is the guest for this episode.
Hey,
He is a legendary producer, collabed with legendary artists, featured on the Snowblind Legacy remix compilation, and made quite possibly one of the best color-based plugins in existence right now.
arguably, my opinion, the best ever. Not gonna lie.
I can't wait to hear
Nasco.
the humbleness when he goes, no, that is horrible plugin. Like, I hated making it that. It was awful. Nasco, how's it going, buddy?
Good. I actually got off finishing a remix today. So
Hey.
depending on when this comes out, it might be out by that time,
It
which
will
is
be
really
out
cool.
on this Friday. So if it's out
Yeah,
that
time
quick,
of
I'll be quite
recording,
surprised.
today's Sunday, so maybe in a
Interesting.
couple of
Well,
weeks.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think the release date is soon after because the deadline was technically today.
Oh,
So I've just been working on that for almost the entire week, and yeah, I'm feeling good because there's going to be a lot more music this year.
absolutely.
Hey,
I did a fun fact when I was making the episode and like planning the episode. The first thing and sort of the icebreaker question that I had was, how much music do you make after focusing on plugins for the last sort of 2 years or so? Because for the last little while, you have been focusing on developing Chroma, the insane plugin, and you've sort of slowed down your releases. So now that sort of Chroma is finished, how much music do you make, and like, what do you sort of do now? Do you make other plugins? Do you make more music now that you're finished with that?
Yeah. Well, it's sort of multifaceted. The so the way I approach plugins is from a very very practical standpoint, where there's a sort of a spectrum, right? Where if you lean into one end too much, then you lose the ability to be good at the other end. And so it's a very, very fine line to walk, where you want to know the limits of your own capabilities and have other people take care of that when you can't. So with Chroma, for example, the Chroma was initially actually a snap heap preset that I made. Snap heap is the rack effect from kilohertz, where you can basically it's modular, so you can have any amount of effect that you want of any specific type, and then you can map it, remap it, do whatever. And it's a very practical way of creating sort of interesting effect chains, and I've sort of made a sort of a simpler version of Chroma in that. But I knew that I have no knowledge in coding or programming.
Mhm.
So I come from the music kind of background, being a music producer, an artist, and then I have to weigh the idea of, okay, and am I going to work with someone else who I trust to do a good job with this, like bringing it to life, or am I going to try it myself, but therefore not be able to actually do the thing that sparked the initial idea, which is sort of the environment of producing music, right? Like you need to be in the studio, you need to be producing music to get the ideas and want to solve the certain problems. And so if you try to do it all, you end up not really doing anything, because sort of the jack of all trades kind of situation, right?
Mm.
And
Right.
so that was Chroma. Really, is I made the effect in Snap Heap, but obviously it had limitations. It was locked to major or minor, and then you could cycle through the root node. But that was sort of the extent to what it could do. And I mean, it worked. Actually, if you check out the Snap Heap preset, which I think is still on my Patreon, and that's sort of the major other thing that has kept me busy the couple past years. The basically Snappy was it was functional and it worked, and it was a response to the popularity of PitchMap at the time, because PitchMap was really big.
Yeah.
But PitchMap had a plethora sort of problems, right? It wasn't just technical issues. It kind of the performance being a problem,
Yeah.
but also it
Mainly
being
the
cost,
cost.
right?
Yeah.
The affordability and accessibility of it.
Mhm.
Especially because I believe it uses iLock, and I don't know if you guys do, but I hate iLock. It's
I actually like deleted all of like once I got it and saw how trash it was like
yeah,
well, not that
it's
trash, but you know.
you mean at
Mhm.
PitchMap specifically, or like
Yeah, and no, actually, just for PitchMap, because like I tried PitchMap sometime, but yeah, like my PC couldn't
yeah,
handle it at all. Yeah,
yeah,
I
that's
know what
so
you're talking
that's
about.
yeah, that's the one thing, and the other thing that I've learned from Chroma, but also from my Patreon, where I do plug data patches, and I've been doing that for 2 to 3 years now. And I try to do a plug data patch every month.
Mhm.
Um, they have taught me a lot about GUI design and user experience. And it's the main reason we stack a bunch of effects and put them in a rack, and then use the rack, is because we want to streamline certain sort of sound design ideas, right?
Mhm.
And when a plugin offers a certain capability but puts stones in your way of getting there because it's too complex to kind of control and manage, then it's almost like the feature that you're looking for is so tedious to get to that it might as well not exist. And that was my problem with PitchMap, where it was so tedious to kind of use that the tedium of the process kind of defeated the purpose, where it wasn't something I wanted to put in my muscle memory into as a music producer to learn the sort of clunky systems that they had in place, including the performance impact on the big projects, right? If you were to use PitchMap everywhere, it would your CPU would be crying.
Mhm.
Um, and then Chroma was sort of a response to that. Is like, okay, so how do we streamline the workflow so people slap it on, click 2 to 3 buttons, and they can kind of move on, right? It's sort of the idea. But then also, how do we make it not impact the experience when it comes to response or the real-time aspect of music production, right? Is you don't want to wait a few hundred milliseconds for the sound to come in. It's really going to slow you down. And PitchMap uses, I think, 100 milliseconds about, or 96, somewhere in that range. And DAWs do a decent job at compensating for plugins that use time or that need time
Mhm.
to process.
It's not that
But
much.
specifically, yeah. But once you start putting plugins in serial, like in series, so one after another, the way the
Mhm.
DAW handles latency compensation is it stacks. So if you have two pitch maps after another, you have 200 milliseconds of latency. But if you had two pitch maps in two different channels, then the DAW actually only needs the look ahead or the time of one plugin, right? Um,
Right. Wait.
and
For real.
yeah, because
That's
it's a
interesting how
parallel
that
process.
works.
Yeah.
It's basically, so the DAW basically delays the audio, right, that you're hearing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's basically like a budget. It's like let's say a financial budget. It's saying, well, you need this amount of money just upfront to do this thing. And
Mhm.
so now you have the time to do it. And because we're paying the CPU, basically,
Right.
your processor to have more time, well, then there's this other guy that also needs the same amount of time. Well, you can do it in the same time because we already paid for the space. Does that make sense?
Because some of them is happening
Yeah, that does make
sequentially.
sense.
Yeah.
Again?
It's like multitasking, but then if something happens after another, then it's sort of like, well, you need to do that first thing first before the second thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, right. That makes sense.
And that's why
Okay.
we love multi-core processors or CPUs with a lot of cores, right? It's because then when we have more cores, you can do things in parallel. I'm actually,
Parallel
um,
processing, computer science
yeah,
class
it's
has not
great for.
failed me.
It's an
Hey.
awesome thing, and it's actually been an idea I've been toying with. Is like you could kind of get a supercharged music production computer if you got like one of those crazy AMD like this. It's really funny if you don't know of them, but like most CPUs, they're like the size of like a biscuit or whatever,
Yeah, they're
right?
really small.
Right, like a
Yeah,
type.
and then there's these server CPUs that are like double or quadruple the size.
We will be producing music on an AI supercomputer. An FL Studio will probably still crash on them as well.
That's the
No.
thing. That's the problem. Is your DAW needs to support that kind of CPU, right? It needs to be able to support and make use of all of the new cores. There's like CPU cores now from AMD that, and I'm sure if any of you play games, and you're well aware that nowadays most people that kind of take some time to build a gaming computer, they will go for AMD because it's just sort of superior for games, right?
Yeah.
And they also offer these server CPUs, which have, I think the one with the highest core count is like 196 cores
Damn,
or something
that's
like
a
that, or
lot.
Damn.
128.
Damn.
Damn.
That's a lot of cores.
Yeah, no, like, why you need
The
so
only
many?
downside,
Damn.
is that each core doesn't have as much performance. So, and the way like the programs, and it's another thing is why I recently switched to Bitwig. Yeah, actually, if you've like watched some of the live streams that I do on YouTube, it's also one of the reasons why I'm going to be releasing a lot more music now is because I noticed something about Ableton specifically that I was using for the several past years, and I switched to it I think in 2016 or 2017. Is the program, if the program is optimized in a way where it cannot use the full capacity of your system, then that's a big problem, right? Because if I'm going to spend a lot of money on a good CPU, but it can the gains that I get from it are small, then what's the point? And so, for example, if I take a look at like games as well, there's certain games that just run poorly on any computer, and that can be due to certain bottlenecks, and the same can happen for music programs where there's certain bottlenecks that mean like you can get the normal CPU that most people get, or you can get the really really expensive top tier one, but you're going to run into the same slowdowns when you create a music project,
Right.
because something else about that program is slow and bottlenecked, and it's see how I'm going into the tangent.
Yeah, this is
It's
this is fascinating because this is all relating to how Chroma sort of you try to build it to be
Yes.
more sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for bringing back the
Yeah.
the highway. So with Chroma specifically, one of the goals was, of course, to optimize it as much as possible, because the
Yes.
snap heap preset wasn't very optimized because it's a modular system and they have to. There's a performance penalty in that, and when you make a proper plugin, you can optimize it as much as possible, right? Which means it's more accessible for everyone. And specifically with working with SpeechRes, who's the developer at XIMP Audio, they wanted a way to have no latency in Chroma, because they use FL Studio. And FL Studio is known to have problems with
The
plugins that cause
worst.
latency.
The worst.
Yeah,
As an
no.
FL Studio user, it's not good.
Even kilohertz plugins have like problems with it, and they're like the simplest
Yes.
things ever. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's optimizing like for the weakest link, which is in practice a good thing. But then we added the spectral morphing feature just recently, which was my request actually, because I prototyped it in Plug Data. So it was actually initially it was just a thing that you put after Chroma, and then you had to do some tricky sidechain input tricks to make it work. But then I sat down with the developer to actually implement it, sort of not word for word, but like kind of system for system. And there was some kind of tricks that we did as well to further optimize it. And it is when you use it on something complex and noisy like a bass pattern, I would argue that if you use Chroma with the spectral morph and some of the gating at 100% and you turn the color up all the way, you actually get something that sounds in the realm of something like PitchMap could do. Whereas right now,
No,
Chroma
definitely.
has been known for the sort of resonant 80 sound, right? But with the morph, you kind of get rid of all of that because
You
you're
can do
doing
more
this
with
sort of
it.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted
There's
to
some
ask.
limitations to the technique, but it's also very latency friendly. It doesn't use that much latency.
Yeah,
Only a fraction.
you also have like a switch for like low latency and high latency on the program as well.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that is something to do with like wanting to not use up too much CPU and you giving the users the option to sort of change
High
how much
quality
it
process
used.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The high quality switch is more so to do with the fact that the act of like changing the pitches of the frequencies, it kind of gets a bit obscured by the side effects of Chroma, which is all of the ringing, right? So because Chroma has a lot of ringing, it kind of hides some of the artifacts of a real-time alternative. So it actually kind of works in tandem, where there's like like granular pitch shifters which kind of flutter, right? Like because they slide it into kind of put it into grains. Well, if you add resonance, then the resonance kind of smooths out that fluttering. And that's why we were able to get away with doing it in real time, because the resonance was kind of hiding some of the imperfections of the zero latency method. And then the real time method, the high quality method, uses a bit of latency. And then you can also use the spectral morph, which will add its own bit of latency. So even with the high quality mode and spectral mode, you're sitting at like 40 milliseconds of latency.
Yeah, no
But
more.
you're
Yeah.
getting a similar sound to PitchMap then, which is not the same. And that's the biggest takeaway from PitchMap is it is still the king at what it fundamentally does. It absolutely is still the king at what it does. The PitchMap is a prime example of a UI that just doesn't work for the majority of people, right? That is the problem. They tried kind of working and to fix that with PitchMap Colors, which funnily enough came around at a similar time as Chroma, that was completely unintentional, by the way. I was like, no,
Right.
Complete
Chroma, in 2 weeks we
competition.
saw PitchMap Colors and we're like, let's make a competitor. That was just an unfortunate.
Yeah, kind of
timing.
unfortunate. Yeah. Whoops.
But it actually kind of it was a good showcase of like, okay, so what actually matters to people, right? Because they made PitchMap Colors, which technically also streamlines PitchMap, makes it a bit easier, right? Because they had the same kind of keyboard idea that we had. It was just the one octave. But ultimately, Chroma ended up being more popular than PitchMap because there's a subtlety to GUI that is that the average user cannot explain, but they can feel it. And I think there's a few other mediums where that happens as well. It could be even songwriting as well, where chords are built in a specific structure to resonate with you in a certain way that a more sort of standard set of chords wouldn't. But a regular user can't really explain it. They just say it's more emotional, right? And
Right.
I think the same can happen with programs in UI and workflows. It's like, okay, this just feels more intuitive to use than this other thing, even though both can technically do something similar. And one might actually be like PitchMap Colors uses, I assume, the same or similar algorithm to PitchMap. And on just a technical level, PitchMap is still superior at the goal, which is to pitch frequencies around and kind of snap them into key. It's always going to be kind of the king at it. And I think as well is it's old, right? It's like from 2012. So it's been around for so long. Yeah, it's been around for so long, and it only blew up because I think like Virtual Riot was really the
Yeah.
and color based. Like,
Yeah,
it's like
pretty
Virtual
much.
kind of just opened up the doors and was like, hey, here's this tool that you can use for this use case, which is actually revolutionary and no one really knew before this, which is funny. But before that, no one knew of it, right? And it's a testament to how important um, the GUI and the workflow, the usability of a plugin is, compared to just providing the best algorithm or providing the best sound. That's not always the priority, and it's I think it's probably, you can probably even find a parallel to that in music to some degree. You can make a song that is in a technical level a marvel, but then you'll have this like dubstep song from 2013 with really shitty mixing that people still resonate with more because there's something else about it that that people find they resonate with, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of catching that lighting in the bottle. I think is sort of the thing that is not easy to catch. And I think Chroma did a pretty good job at that,
It's
at
kind of
catching that
like
lighting.
yeah, like you think it's kind of luck based, like catching that light, as you say.
Um, yeah, parts and parts. I think there was at the time as well. There was a demand, and there was a personal demand. I mean, the reason why I make so Chroma didn't we didn't make Chroma because we were like, let's make a plugin, and then Chroma existed. Chroma as an effect already existed before I talked to the Ximp Audio guys as the Snap Heap preset. So I basically on my Patreon, one of my goals was to create monthly, and I don't do that anymore because I kind of burned out a little bit from that. But I used to do monthly sample packs and monthly Ableton racks, and then also monthly Snap Heap racks.
Yeah.
And that was, and the thing is when you get to do this stuff pretty much for a living, right? Because I had enough people kind of supporting me to do this full time. You really tend to do something that a lot of other producers don't really ever get to, which is to really optimizing your tools and your brushes, your paint brushes, effectively, right? It's usually you're so busy just making the music that you don't really ever get to sit down and optimize to this kind of degree and actually kind of get funded by people to do it.
Yeah.
And it's very symbiotic because everyone else also benefits from the same kind of work that I put in, right? It's like Chroma is not super expensive, and I would say it's probably helped a lot of people get
Actually,
sounds,
pretty cheap. Yeah.
and it
That.
helped me myself as well, right? Like
Mhm.
it only existed because I wanted it for myself. I didn't want to sort of introduce 100 milliseconds of latency just for that kind of effect. Uh,
Mhm.
so the with the Patreon, I created the Snappy preset, and then I noticed people wanted sort of more control over it, and I knew that that wasn't quite possible with the constraints of Snapheap. And so I hit up Xenvodio, and we
Yeah.
actually initially wanted to do a different plugin together. It was one of my other Snapheap presets that actually is now a plugged out patch of mine, which is called NSub. It creates a sub oscillator on a piece of audio or a synth. So you don't need MIDI for it effectively. So you just put it as an audio effect onto something, and you can then select a note, and then it will use audio following and many other tricks to create sort of a convincing sub layer that you have a lot of control over. And you can even draw in the harmonics of the sub. So you get like the first 8 harmonics, like in Serum, you have the harmonic bins that you can kind of draw,
Mhm.
which is very important to a sub because you can get a lot of different sounds out of it. And then it also has a bunch of effects on it. But at the time, I think we tried making that into a plugin, and it wasn't. I think the vision for it wasn't quite there at the time, and the
Mhm.
use cases were a bit more narrow because people are very. There's two groups of people with subs, right? Because sub is such an important thing to our genre. Actually, is like without sub,
It's
it's
kind of all of it. Yeah.
yeah, in some cases, yeah. And so people are either two ways, right? They are either like, well, okay, I didn't actually do anything. I just made the serum base and I had the separate sub in it, and then I had a bunch of processing on it, and I'm just using the sub from that. There's that type of
Mhm.
person that doesn't really care. And then there's the other person who's like, yeah, I meticulously high pass every single bass of mine, and then I have this separate sub patch that I have
Guilty.
very specific MIDI for, and then
I do
I
that as
have
well when I'm making stuff.
Yeah.
yeah. So there's the sort of the two groups, and the sub effect was sort of in between that, right? Where like you can just put this on and replace the kind of muddy sub that you have on it,
Mhm.
and then kind of move on. That was kind of the goal. But oftentimes you then want more control if you're that type of person, anyways. So we found maybe working on one of my other ideas that I did for the Patreon, which was the spectral scaler, which is what it was initially called.
Ooh.
They and funny enough, actually, you can if you check out the ColorForge preset bank that I made for kilohertz, that
Mhm.
is a preset bank for faceplant. All presets use kind of like a mini version of Chroma in it. Um, so it's if you're not aware of it, I can actually probably like screen share and show you some other presets as well, depending on if
Yeah,
since it's a video, right? The
yeah,
podcast.
I can edit stuff in post.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Um,
we've never had like screen sharing on the podcast before.
oh yeah, you
Yeah.
haven't done it.
We have never, but like that's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
it's
also just cool to see how many things people have used this plugin for. Like it went so viral.
yes.
Like I saw like
Oh
Chime made a
yeah.
video about it before it releases. There's been loads of people using it as well, and I use it every single time I want to make some below par color bass. Um,
No, yeah, myself
It's
included. Like I entered a remix competition for a color-based song, and I just like went to town for, when it like
oh yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
so easy to use. Like I love it.
So there's a specific sauce about it
Hmm.
that makes it work where even something with like PitchMap with its technically superior processing doesn't quite work as well as Chroma. And there's a specific sauce to it. And funny enough, um, Virtualite released his own kind of color based style kind of
Lunacy
plugin, right? With
Audio
Lunacy. Yeah.
recently, yeah.
Hmm.
And I noticed that they have one of the core presets that they have is called Virtual Riot. And what's really interesting is that the what it basically is a major or minor scale with one note removed from the scale. And the specific note that is removed is the transition note of that scale. So you have your different chords, and
Mm.
most chords sound pretty nice if you like kind of go from chord to chord. But there's always this one chord that only works in very specific situations where you're transitioning between two other chords. And usually, if you were to play that chord itself, it sounds pretty bad, especially if you sustain it. And it's because of that specific note. It's this idea where very complex chords sound nice because you have a bunch of evenly spaced notes, sort of chromatic or pentatonic is one of those kind of scales, right? That sounds kind of nice whenever, but it's
Yeah.
also very simple because you only get five notes out of the seven usually. But
Mhm.
if you just mix in that ninth chord, for example, that sus note, which a lot of people call it, um, then it also works, but only if you do one of them. If you do both of them, then it starts to kind of get scratchy and sounds kind of bad. So the idea is that you can create you have a wider range of a palette of sounds by including one of the sus notes. And the way I explain it is usually when you have a note and then you have another note and there's a semitone space apart between them, they
Yeah.
can usually work together. They will usually sound pretty good. But once you have two notes, right, that are next to each other just by one semitone, it sounds pretty bad because it's like all kind of detuned and it sounds
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
very
like horrible.
dissonant.
It sounds very scary. Yeah, very dissonant. And major minor scales have two occasions in the scale where that happens. And that's why you can't just create a chord with all notes. It sounds bad, right? If you create a
Right.
chord with just all the notes in the scale, it sounds bad. So you have to use a specific set. And the funny thing is if you take out that one pesky note that is only like very rarely used and it's only used for those transition chords,
Mhm.
then you can actually use the other sus note that is also technically dissonant, but it works. and it still works,
Right.
even though it is dissonant, because it doesn't happen often enough in the spectrum to be a problem. And so when you load up Chroma and you just choose major or minor, and then you choose your root node, you're actually using a modified version of major or minor. It is not the original version. It is it's a slightly simplified version of major or minor that just works most of the time, or
I
pretty much
see.
all of the time. So it actually means that if you were to include the seventh note or the all 7 notes of the major minor scale, you technically speaking have more variety, or you could have a more complex result. But then 95% of the use cases where you put it on, it sounds bad because it's going to create
Right.
your regular chords, but it's also going to create these transition chords, because Chroma looks at all frequencies and it doesn't, like, you can use MIDI to kind of force a specific chord.
It
Yeah.
doesn't
But
really tell
most
what
people
the
don't do
chord
that.
you're trying to get is. It just looks at every
Yeah,
single
Chroma
frequency.
just, it's like passive, right? You don't
Right.
actively, it's like a passive. It copies the across the spectrum in octaves. And it was really interesting that the Virtual Riot chord preset as well was using a similar trick. And it goes to show that they also really understand how to make these things work sort of for all kinds of situations. And with Bismuth as well, I don't see it as a competitor at all to Chroma, because they do entirely different things. And I think you can just also tell. I think most people can tell that they do different things, right? The only thing that really connects the two is the side effect of it being a real-time thing, which is the ringing, the kind of resonator sound of it. And that is physics. That is just a physics thing.
That is a
If
great
Damn.
way to wrap up how to make plugins 101 with Nasko.
101, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's the notebook. That's the part that
physics.
you use in order to sell the plugin. Just cut that bit out and use that to. If you want to buy Chroma, this is why. 30-minute advertisement on why it's so good.
It's actually though.
Well, enough
Actually,
about how you make the plugins, and more about how you make your own music as well. Because
Yeah.
you are a very accomplished artist, releasing on, Disciple. But a question that I had is, you have done a lot of remixes. You did a remix for Snowblind Legacy, Thrive by Slander. You did a Tri-Night remix as well. What I wanted to know, what is one of the favorite sort of remixes that you have done in
Ooh.
your
it's the one that's
making
not
of
on
music?
Spotify.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
It's kind of
It's on
problematic
SoundCloud.
because that Spotify is what I use to do my research. So
Yeah, I think that is potentially also a topic to get into, because it's also partially one of the reasons why I don't release so much at the moment. It's very multifaceted. There's also some things about it that are a bit more sort of personal with past people I've worked with, where sort of negative experiences have sort of impacted my environment or my it's not the
Professional
confidence,
career.
it's the
Right.
it's so when you start making music, right? And you just release. That's how I started. It's like 2014, 2013. You make a beat in FL Studio, upload it to SoundCloud, and then you get a couple of comments, and you're like happy, right? And then you keep doing that. And
Right.
then at some point, you're going to start releasing on labels, or you're going to start using a distributor. And the really interesting part is that process of having no friction of releasing, that process of having, like, not even thinking about it. When you don't protect that, when it gets disturbed by something, it can cause an effect where you have to rebuild that relationship to releasing music, because it's a fundamental thing of artists, right? It's like, that's why a lot of artists have like vaults of music. It's like lots of songs they never released, even though they could be released. They would only have to put in a bit of work to finish them and release them, right? It's
Right.
like there's this common frustration of like, this guy probably has a bazillion songs that he's never released, and it's so unfortunate. It's usually because people have a relationship with the act of releasing, with the act of distributing their songs and putting them out. And when people have negative experiences with that, or people connected to that, it can leave a lasting impact where you have to rebuild that relationship to that process. And for me, that's been a really difficult thing to do, not because I lack the passion, but because it happened at a time where also I was really starting to look at the industry and look at the state of music distribution and things like Spotify, etc. Right? Because when I started the Patreon, it was a sort of a turning point for me where I was like, okay, well, music itself is not sustainable enough and potentially even valued enough by the platforms. And this isn't even necessarily a problem with consumers or listeners. This is a problem with Spotify and all of the other platforms competing. It's like, you guys ever played on Xbox Game Pass?
I have.
Fortunately not, but
No, it's bad, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
it's awful.
But it used to be really good. Like, it used to be really cheap.
Yeah, no,
You
to be
get
fair,
a ton
yeah.
of games, and they would even sometimes, like, you can probably check it now. They would probably offer you like a 1 month for $1 or something like that.
Right.
Like, they do that sometimes. And the reason they do that is not because they're kind to you. They do that because they want you as a customer. So they want you to use them or not some other service. And the same
Right.
happens with Spotify and Apple Music, etc. They want you to be part of this system, become reliant, so they can then later on make profit and actually raise the prices. And the problem is who's like, as a normally a company would just, sort of eat the losses and maybe get investment to continue doing that because they're getting market share. Sorry if I'm getting too businessy here,
This is
but
so interesting.
Right.
the big issue I had, and I think this is something subconsciously that every artist feels, is that it's not the company eating the losses to gain market share. It's they're using the artists to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The artists
Yeah,
are
no, that
losing the
makes
money in the process,
I
not the
heard
company.
Spotify is also like really bad in terms of like the streams per pence or something like that, like, or like
Yeah.
the rate.
No, yeah, like as an artist, Spotify is like your worst pick, but like it's where everyone listens
Everyone,
and
like,
everyone
if you don't
is.
use Spotify,
Yeah.
you're alienating a whole massive part of your audience. So it's sort of like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't really do anything about it apart from deal with it.
Yeah.
Yes. And so the general trend has always been to use Spotify as a platform to grow and then do something else to make the money or sustain yourself financially as an artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that used to be the live scene. That used to be shows. And it made sense, right? It was kind of some symbiotic, is people would listen to your stuff on Spotify, and then they would see that you'd be playing a show somewhere near them, or
Yeah.
close enough for them to consider driving there. And that's how it used to be. But then Corona really proved to everyone that that is also something that can just vanish in an instant. And I started going full time with music in 2020. So while I was releasing before that, 2020 was the year where I started going full time, and you actually noticed that I was actually releasing quite often during that
Yes.
time. It was songs like "On My Mind," the Knife Runners thing, and then I think prior to that it was also Disciple stuff, and then it was stuff with Panda Eyes at the time as well. But then with Corona, the thing I was trying to build, which was the sustainability through live shows, because I also started playing live shows in that year, and we wanted to sort of climb the ladder that was the live scene. That broke down, right, because of Corona. And so the problem became is that there was, and this was someone I was working with at the time, because that's generally speaking something you kind of consider is when you go full time, you kind of work with someone else that can kind of handle, sort of the more business side thing. So you can focus on music. I think there was a growing kind of frustration with sort of the opportunity that was taken from me due to the sort of global pandemic, right? So things like where there was initially a plan, there was not anymore.
Yeah.
So things
Yeah.
just kind of were kind of all over the place, and there was a bit sort of a falling out over time then with the person I was working with. And the problem there is that as a side effect of that, I stopped releasing music because continuing to release music was like kind of feeding a system that didn't work anymore. If that makes sense.
Or
So
at
like,
least it didn't work for you, like as an artist, the one making the music. Instead, it went all the money went to somewhere else, and it didn't benefit you as an artist to continue doing that.
yeah, especially because with Corona, you didn't really have I mean, it was already tough, right? If you're in the EU, it's already tough to actually build a DJ career. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's understated just how much of building the DJ career. Like, yes, if you're a big artist, you can get booked for your music. But you have to really be like in the top 5 or 10% of artists
Right.
to
No,
have the privilege of.
even higher, I think sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
trying to be generous with the numbers.
Yeah.
And as you can actually tell as well, I played a show I think 1 or 2 years ago, because I wanted to see if it would be worth working, like kind of being a more sort of recurring artist at a local place here in Germany. And when I was there, I noticed the culture was very much like, okay, if you're not in the top 1%, here are the rules. You follow this, and you're gonna be you're gonna have to be okay with this until you've put in the work or you're popular enough for us to give you a better kind of situation.
Mm.
And specifically, that was on the financial side. It was just not worth it. It was like economically, it didn't make sense. So it's like the one thing that was supposed to um, kind of provide artists with a safety net in terms of financials, so they can keep doing art, is okay. Well, if Spotify is not the case, then it's the live scene, right? And that all fell apart because of Corona. So the sort of fundamental system kind of broke during that time. And I think for me, it wasn't like, now I can reflect on this and kind of like tell you about it that way. But at the time, I didn't know what the hell was going on, right? Because it was a like subconscious thing. So for me, it was actually more dramatic at the time, because it was like, it felt like I was falling out with music. I wasn't finishing anything, and it was very frustrating. And I think it's because I was the opportunity that I had and the energy that I was putting into my career in 2020 was basically kind of just like like you can slap a fly with by closing your two hands, right? You slap your
Yeah.
two hands together. It felt like that. Like I had all of that energy. I was flying up in the air, and then there was Corona. Did that, right?
Right.
And so I've been trying to sort of rebuild the energy from that. And one of the things that helped tremendously was the Patreon, because when I started it in 2022, I also did lessons for it. So I had students through the
Oh,
Patreon, and with
okay.
the Patreon, it's great because they kind of take on the business side of things for you. They manage, all of the collections, and they take a percentage, which is okay. I think that's fair, because Patreon itself as a
Yeah,
platform
it's a
also has a
platform.
bit of a reputation, right? It's like if you subscribe to someone on Patreon, you're not getting into anything shady, right?
Right.
And so the thing is that I never stopped like making music. In fact, I think the music I make now could be the best music I ever made,
Mm.
and that is
Hey.
because the Patreon actually was a bit like a boot camp, where the goal was to provide people with value for producing their own music, because that's what people subscribe for, right? Is my knowledge on how I make music, because of the live streams and stuff. So it's generally speaking kind of educational. But then also creating all the snappy racks and creating all of the Ableton racks, and then getting into plug data and creating Chroma. It's like the idea now is okay, how can I be so efficient about music production that I can maximize the potential of that? And that's what I've been focused on. And I think if you listen to this is the thing, is it's kind of difficult to say because I don't want you to go on SoundCloud and listen to the remixes that are not on Spotify because SoundCloud has a really bad audio codec, and I made a fuss about it on Twitter, and
Yes,
it
I
blew
did
up.
see that.
Yeah.
And it's because I did a remix. It was a bootleg for Virtual Riot's and
This
Mode
Could Be
Step
Us.
song. This Could Be Us. Yes, and I
Yes.
posted that music video on YouTube, and that was very, very well received. And I think particularly on YouTube and SoundCloud, of course, as well. But what I was trying to do is sort of also output a testament of, hey, I am putting in the work. I am continuously improving and wanting to be better at what I do. But with everyone that is still waiting for me to, sort of gush over them on Spotify with new releases, it's one of the things that are a bit more personal and that I need to work on personally to get comfortable again with just releasing. And the thing there is as well is one of the it's not recent, right? But one of the releases because I've done is the Take on the World, which was released on Bygore. And that was also very well received. It's a bit older though. I think it's from 2 years ago or 3 years ago even. But as you can tell, that was a
2022.
label release. Yeah. Or even older than, yeah.
Yes.
Time passes when you turn 20, it seems.
Yeah.
So
The
Oswald would.
the pattern I have noticed from myself is whenever, and this is also happening right now actually, with the remix that I worked on, who is also for someone who I've worked with prior. And I think it's also some of my best work again. And it's going to be a super, super fun song. Similar to the amount of energy that you get from the Virtual Riot remix, where it feels like it's switching up constantly and giving you something new. Which I personally like, because if you keep listening to the same song, it might be a little bit harder to digest the first time you listen to it, because it's new ideas constantly. But then if you re-listen to the song, it's almost like where a song could be re-looping or looping an idea or playing an idea twice. That works. Right. But it means that the total count of listens until that idea gets old
is higher.
Is less.
Slower.
Yeah, slow. Yeah,
slower, right? Because after 10 listens, that idea you will have heard it double the amount of time.
Yeah, it doesn't impress you anymore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but if your song is constantly changing and there's new ideas every time, then when you listen to a song twice, you've only heard that idea for two times, right? Because it's only playing once in the song.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of looping it yourself by listening to the entire thing again. And then, so what happens slowly is over time, and I noticed this with my girlfriend as well when she listens to some of my songs, is there will be certain parts that she will remember, because not because it's played twice, which is a sort of more formulaic way of letting people it's like a very interesting concept with music. It's like when you listen to something for the first time, you could be hype, but you can only be hype when you know what you're listening to, right? If you don't know what's coming, then there's no way of humming along. There's no way of knowing the rhythms that are about to happen. So you need to listen to it twice. And that's why oftentimes in drops and EDM, you repeat the idea. So the listener gets familiar with the first time. It's maybe sort of overwhelming at first, and then they hear it again and they can already start sort of getting along with it. Mm-hmm. And then the Virtual Riot remix that I did is different because it introduces new ideas fairly consistently. So the first time you listen to it, and it's a bit of an experiment, right? And I think Virtual Riot himself kind of does this with some of his songs as well, but he
he does, definitely, yes.
I think he does it the best. So it was kind of like an homage. The entire remix is just an homage to his kind of music, right? And his kind of style. Or philosophy of how to make something that feels like an experience. And it's the remix that I finished, or almost finished today, has a similar kind of situation going on. And I think it's going to be something that I want to do more of as well, because it's just really fun. And it also keeps it fresh for me as well when I'm producing it. Because I do one thing and then I can actually move on and do another new thing. And it's really fun for me to do that. But in order to be able to do all of this stuff, I need to be fast. I need to be efficient with production, right? And it just so happens that I've been running a Patreon where I've been basically bootstrapping and just hardcore going into that specific thing, which is how do I optimize every single thing, not every single process, but how do I optimize the most important things about my production, which is like sound design, which is mixing, right? Which is in color-based case, a good fast way to colorize sounds as well. And so what's been happening is I've been sort of getting better in behind the scenes, and now that I've switched to Bitwig recently, I've noticed one more thing that was actually holding me back besides the sort of more personal side of kind of following up with releasing, which is again what we I think talked about before the podcast, which is how the program can be holding you back, even though your machine or your hardware has the means. So if you get a very expensive MacBook to produce on, and Ableton still slows down after 100 tracks, that's a problem.
Yes.
Right? And it's not something that is talked about a whole lot. And I think that's a big problem, because when we're talking about the artists that do these big tracks that are ever evolving and that need a lot of attention and a lot of layering, etc., we're talking about like 200, 300, 400 track projects, which even FL has problems, right? It's like when you get to a certain point in FL doesn't slow down, but it like becomes unstable. It like crashes out sometimes and just literally crashes, right?
Yeah, I haven't used it, so I don't know, but FL Studio definitely does that a lot.
Yeah, no, and the glitches and the thing there is like, damn. It's like so annoying.
It starts kind of breaking down in front of you, and it feels very unsettling. It's very
I yet to see someone sample that though.
Someone has to sample FL Studio breaking down.
FL breaking down sample remix. I don't know.
That'd be fun if you'd put that into a song. It's like the song is so good that the CPU, you just capture the CPU going crazy. There's many menacing things you could do, like adding little clicks and pops, making the user think that the headphones are broken or something like that.
The sound break.
I have on my Discord server. I have brace yourself. I have
soundboard turned off.
Oh my god!
Okay, hold on. Let me quickly turn the soundboard on.
Oh, you have it disabled.
Yeah, I have it disabled because
no, I do listen to it and it's so weird.
We all know that sound, right? That little click sound.
My god!
When there's some issue with your audio.
Doesn't that fuck up with the speakers though?
Not a single click. That should be okay.
Okay.
It's when you get into sounds that are really weird and difficult to play back. There's some really, really cursed waveforms out on the internet that you should never play on your computer.
Yeah.
So the change to Bitwig was huge for me, because I switched a couple of months ago, and I've produced some of my best work since. And I think one of the reasons is when you start a song, and I think a lot of artists can relate to this, is when you start a fresh project, everything's fast, right? Like the first few hours are super fast, and then it kind of slows down. And that can be due to, you start polishing a sound too long. Like you just spend too much time on fine-tuning certain sounds. But funny enough, with Ableton specifically, the program itself slows down. When you start a fresh project and you add an audio track to add a sample in, it's very, very, very quick. When I was working on the remix with Temanite for AU5, that project, we did everything in one project. And Temanite usually, he told me, he uses FL, so he actually tends to split his songs into 4 projects. You can tell because the songs are great and very, very complex, right? It's cool. But it is a limitation. It kind of hinders the creativity, because now you have to do all this managing of different projects. You have to go back and forth. You have to like render your ideas and kind of commit. And it's actually really fun, because like the entire remix is so complex and so big. And if I've just gotten feedback from the person that I'm doing the remix for, and it's like I can do that in 5 minutes because none of the things are committed. Like everything is still MIDI, everything still has plugins on it. There's not a single channel that I
It's like
have
consolidated.
frozen or sound resampled due to
Yeah.
performance reasons. Right?
That's
Not a single.
that's really nice, actually. Yeah.
So I can just go back and fix anything, which is very, very freeing. And what it does is it removes all of the friction of what at least I was experiencing with Ableton, where with the Terminite collab remix, we had up to I think 400 tracks audio, like 400 tracks total in the project, which is a lot, right?
No,
And it's
yeah.
because we were working with stems, and he was stemming out like individual layers and stuff. So it was kind of like it was stacking a lot. But
Yeah.
the thing is that the project itself was not heavy. Like since a lot of the things were audio files with just maybe a pro cue on there, but it was slow, like really slow. If you wanted to add any plugin, it would take literally 8 seconds.
Oof. No, yeah.
And the horrible thing about Ableton is whenever it loads something, it freezes the DAW, right? Like it feels like the thing is about to crash.
Right, you can't do anything else. Yeah.
Yes, you have to just wait for it to finish. And so when you are in the final stages of finishing the song, and especially with someone like Temanite, who really values the longevity of music, right? Because he definitely leans more into having Spotify be his primary platform and sort of having the music actually sort of create the revenue for you. That is very important to him, and that is great because then the music becomes sort of timeless when you spend more time working on it, right? And it's the people who will listen to the song many, many times will appreciate all the little details. But it is the worst when the DAW is at a point where doing any changes, you get punished by it by losing so much time waiting.
Yeah, no, and you lose the momentum and almost inspiration. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like for an artist, it's the worst thing. Imagine you're painting a picture, and every brushstroke you make, you have to wait 8 seconds for it to appear. It's like it makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
So what do? Well, you get better hardware. You get a better computer. Like, what are you doing?
Still doesn't
just
help.
get,
Yeah, but
it doesn't.
that
It
won't
doesn't.
help.
For Ableton, it does not help. I have
Damn.
if any of the people watching are into sort of computer specs and stuff, because I'm a very computer person without being a programmer, which is sometimes rare. I
Yeah,
have
no,
a
actually.
I have a AMD Ryzen 9 9950X, which has 16 cores, so it's 32 virtual cores, and the thing can clock up to I think 5.6 gigahertz.
Still slows
This
down.
thing in Ableton, yes, this thing uses 200 watts,
Damn.
which is a lot.
Yeah,
So it
no,
can use up
like
to 200 watts. But the thing is that my CPU was never maxed out in the Ableton project with Temanite. It was never maxed out. The problem was Ableton itself was slow. And that had nothing to do with my CPU. It had everything to do with how Ableton is programmed. And what I've heard from people that use FL Studio is that FL Studio remains smooth, but it just crashes.
Yeah.
Like you'll just get random crashes with FL, which is equally as horrible.
Maybe
but
even worse,
with
but yeah.
yeah, the thing is, like with FL, you get frustrated or very annoyed with it. With Ableton, you just get depressed because Ableton doesn't crash, but it makes you wait so long that it kind of like you have a great idea, you want to do this thing, and it's going to take you 2 minutes just to do it, without even like fine tuning it. And then with this remix that I did, or that I finished today. I can still add, a fresh instance of Faceplant or any plugin, and it loads up instantly. And the project uses 40 to I think 46 gigabytes of RAM, which is not easy to
Holy
get
no!
nowadays.
Like my laptop has 8. That's what the hell?
Yeah. You can imagine it's a big project.
There will
The
be
CPU
people
usage,
trying to steal your RAM after this episode.
yeah,
400
very
racks. Yeah.
The CPU usage as well actually is just idle is at like 40% already, because there's so many plugins that don't fully sleep, like they don't turn off when there's nothing happening. So the CPUs putting in the work, and everything's smooth. I've not had a single dropout in that Bitwig project. And it's amazing because it means I can have the same energy that I can put into the song. I can continue to add elements. I can continue to add pieces to my music without being slowed down by any technical needs, right?
Damn.
And so I actually, if Bitwig, if Ableton were to just fix that particular issue, I wouldn't probably have switched to Bitwig. But actually now finding more things about Bitwig that I actually also like over Ableton. But it's one of the major reasons why, at least now, that whole thing is solved. And it's like, it feels like it's a stupid kind of analogy to make. But if you like get out of a abusive relationship and while you were in it, you didn't realize you were being treated badly. That's what Ableton
You only
feels
realize
like.
how good you've had it after, like how bad you had it after you've like come out of it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've not had that
Yeah, but
experience,
100% then, yeah.
but I'm sure many others maybe had. And it felt like that with Bitwig, where I've lost all of that weight of this subconscious feeling of slowness. And I think that was probably also partially, and this is where I want to be really careful, right? I blame myself for not releasing as much, for sure. I think I have some work to do in terms of in terms of doing that again. And it is not a problem of falling out with music. It's not a problem of getting worse, because there's always the thing of like feeling like your music isn't good enough to be released, right? That is always a feeling that like a lot of artists have. I don't have that feeling with my own music. The thing that I have is sort of the relationship I had with distribution and releasing music had been kind of very much torn apart because of all of the events. And then the other thing is, and I think this was something I didn't notice at the time, but I can now reflect on and really realize, is Ableton had a big part in it. Because I only like most times, like I would get to the 70% mark of a song with the intention of finishing it, but I wouldn't.
Because it was just so slow.
Because it was slow. And it's like when you already have reasons not to finish music because of other circumstances, it's like this gives you the perfect excuse, right? Which is why I want to be cautious, because I don't want to blame Ableton entirely, but it definitely had a big part in it. And I think it's so important for artists to look at the tools that they use and figure out, is this actually like, is this potentially even hindering me in getting my stuff done and finished?
I love how my notes had a completely different plan, but it's been so interesting to hear your thoughts about how you've music produced over the past years and sort of like reflecting on your time, because this has been like infinitely more interesting to sort of see why did you stop and like why you've struggled with it instead of, what was the process behind making stuff. It's been so interesting to hear sort of what has affected your journey making music as a whole. And yeah, it sort of sounded like, there's been a lot in the past few years.
I think for everyone, right? Like
that is
2020
true.
has been
20 the pandemic was a thing.
Big year.
Yeah. And well, the other thing that might be very, very interesting and potentially even controversial, and it's been something I've been thinking of, is in regards to when I start releasing music again and I start being way more active again. I don't know if you've watched some of the Bitwig live streams, but those would be representative of some of my newest work, except for the Clanker video that I did where I tried to remake a Suno generated song to try and see if I can
Clanker vid.
Thanks.
Clanker.
Yeah, beating the clankers, I think was the title. It was a humbling experience because the stream ended up being 11 hours and I only made half of the thing, which is kind of telling on just how much of an advantage these things have in just generating so much in so little time. And obviously, there's a whole debate you can have about if it should even exist to begin with, if the database that they use to even generate it is ethically sourced, right? Which is the biggest problem. But some of the other live streams I did with Bitwig is some of the recent work that I've done, and I think you can really tell that things are going into a very interesting direction. and I'm super excited about it as well because of all the the new tools that I have at my disposal just from doing the Patreon. It's like I have if you check out some of the things that I have, one of the recent things that I release is called SpecComp, which is a spectral compressor, and it's very specific because it tries to maximize the workflow and the good practices and work around the limitations of wanting it to be streamlined as much as as streamlined as possible. And it's actually like the fourth or fifth iteration of that effect. So I've had prior plugged out patches on my Patreon over the years that had also been a spectral compressor, but I kept refining it and finding new ways to make it better. And this is kind of like the final definitive version of that. And I'm actually thinking of making another version that is now again simplified, kind of like OTT, because there's still some people who, it's a bit intimidating to look at like complex tools like that, which is fair, right? Like thinking about spectral anything is
maybe
quite,
the name
quite the
itself
abstraction.
sounds complicated.
Yeah. But what it does is when I use these tools, I do not have to do as much work in the more sort of traditional things that you would usually do, which is multiband compression and EQing and whatnot. SpecComp can kind of just take any input sound and make it immediately usable for any mixdown or for a full-fledged mixdown. And you have to do very, very little afterwards to even like fix anything. And it allows me to create music that is more and more extreme in the energy and in the ideas and in the consistency. And I'm actually really glad that everything that has happened, because I think if Corona wouldn't have happened, I would have just continued to release music. I don't think I would have had the platform and the time to optimize my music in a way where I feel like I'm slowly catching up to the bigger artists that are really, really talented and really, really good at what they do.
Enjoying the process more and taking the time for yourself. Which I think is a really nice way to sort of cap off the whole story of yourself as an artist. It's been such an interesting conversation about sort of your journey as a whole, and I am also looking at the fact that we are sort of running out of time for this.
Oh man.
But before we go into the end of the episode shenanigans, I just wanted to ask you a quick question, which is, what sort of one piece of advice would you have for the people at home based on sort of your whole entire journey with distribution and also Ableton? If you had one thing to say to them, what would that thing be?
I would say that the value of music will eventually return to normal. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I think at the moment there's a lot of pessimism about how music is being valued, and I think a lot of the frustration goes towards consumers and listeners, and I think it's the wrong way to look at it. I think it's the platforms and the systems in place that use artists and use art to gain an advantage in their own interests, and those are mostly just financial. But I think that can't go on forever. Like many other things that are going on at the moment, they won't last forever, and I think things will get better. So for anyone who's currently making music and thinking about, the sort of the possibility of stopping it because it's just currently not being valued the same way that it used to be, it will get better. The wave will kind of move on, and we'll see better times. I am pretty sure that'll be the case. So if you're producing music and you're thinking, you're sort of pessimistic or frustrated with the current situation, I think it's worth sticking to it if it brings real value to you, because music, to me at least, is an infinite source of quality of life and enjoyment. There's just nothing quite like that in art in general. And it would be a shame to give that up just because of the current market conditions.
That's so sweet.
That's what I would.
All right, Oswald, do you know what to do next?
Yeah, actually, well, talking about Yeah,
The
music.
final time
Uh,
for EDM
damn,
season
dude.
1.
Damn. Well, I have to get another question for next
Yeah, you
season.
gotta think of a new one, buddy.
Well, I'll have time, but talking about music that that you enjoy, I'm curious to know what are some of your favorite tracks, favorite albums, favorite artists that you'd like to shout out, or are just your favorite at the moment?
What stuffs are
What are
you
you listening
digging right
to?
now?
Yeah.
So I love the comeback of Bro Step. I think that is amazing.
Hey,
I
yeah.
think people are realizing just, they've had the fun with all of the more atonal subgenres like rhythm and such and tear out and whatnot. But they're
Mm-hmm.
coming back. So I feel like, that was the first thing that happened. Then color bass came around as the opposite extreme. And then people were like, okay, we like color bass, but sometimes you want something in between those two. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
that's Bro Step. Bro Step is fun. It has attitude. It can be interesting. It can be complex. And
And
there's been
also
some,
that bite of nostalgia, I feel.
yeah, that as well. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
with nowadays, like it sounds different because it's more well produced compared to back then, right?
For
Um,
sure, actually.
so any artists that are currently pushing that, I highly recommend checking them out. I think Zomboy and Barely Life did a collaboration recently. That was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Barely Life in general is really pushing it. They had a mix recently on their YouTube channel, which was very, very fun to listen to. And then I think as
Yes.
well, obviously, people like Virtual Riot, I can always recommend because they've been kind of dabbling with it again as well, and they always have a bit of that bro step flair in their music. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it's hard to recommend them when everyone knows about them anyway.
Any
Um,
songs you stand out?
again, please.
Yeah, any songs you're digging right now?
Yes, the Zomboy and Barely Life collab specifically, and
Mm-hmm.
well, the header of Virtual Riot's new album, um,
Burning Out.
Burning Out, was also really really fun, a very very fun tune, and I love that. It's when you can just kind of shut off your brain and just enjoy the music. But I think Time Machine by Zomboy and Barely Life is a really fun, really really fun song, and Zomboy has also just recently been making some really really fun songs. There was one that was specifically in triplets. Find that one.
Ooh, I'll have to
All
tune
It's
right.
in on that.
Royal Blood, I think is the
Ooh,
one.
I'll need to check it out.
Okay. Yeah.
And Project Z. Those two are really really cool.
Okay.
All right, we have
That's really
gotten to
nice.
the end of the episode. But before we go, Nasko, now is the time for you to. I give time at the end of every episode for the artist or the person who is on the podcast to sort of say whatever you want to say, shout out anything you want to shout out. If you want to promote something, now's your time to do so. You can say whatever you want now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose the only thing is to look out for my Spotify in the coming weeks because the remix that I'm doing is going to be an official remix. And it's going to be released on Spotify, which is, people have been waiting for me to put stuff out, and then
Yeah.
hopefully I can keep that that sort of energy going and start releasing some independent music this year. So specifically Spotify is going to be a lot more active, and I think that's why I want to kind of shout it out because I know a lot of people use that mainly, and I don't want to support SoundCloud because I don't want anyone to listen to my music through that platform. Considering
All right.
how much more work I put into it now. So yeah, Spotify and YouTube, I think as well. Those two platforms
Okay.
I like, and Bandcamp, but that will be another story for another time.
That's
Well,
yeah.
for the final time for season 1 on the EDM grid.
Damn.
Thank you so much, Nasko, for coming on. It has been absolutely incredible. Once again, my name is Henry, also known as Henkray, joined by Oswald, aka Oswald.
I'm gonna tear up, dude.
With the guest, Nasko, who is sort of... It's been so interesting hearing your story over the past several years and hearing sort of the struggles that you've been through the entire time. Thank you so much for listening in, and we'll see you in the next one.